Okay, good morning. I'm Magdalena Serpa. I work at the One Health Institute. I believe in joining efforts to address complex problems. So in the next hour, we will be here about programs to address food insecurity in Colorado, and our speakers will share with us some of the successes that they have had in addressing food insecurity. At the end of their presentations, we hope to have a session of questions and answers so that you as an audience and the presenters discuss how to support existing efforts to reduce food insecurity among CSU students and hopefully also propose additional actions that can be taken. You have the description, a brief description with the bios of our kind presenters. So I will just very briefly ask each one of them, starting by Dr. Johnson, please, and continue here, to introduce yourself. Kindly say your name, institutional affiliation, and one reason why you have decided to address food insecurity. Thank you.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jennifer Johnson. I work here at Colorado State University. I have a dual appointment with the School of Education and the Division of Student Affairs and the Office for Student Leadership, Involvement, and Community Engagement, otherwise known as SLICE. And I got involved with this topic about 5 years ago, actually just as a series of conversations with Food Bank. Amy was involved with those. And we've just seen more and more and more campus food insecurity. So my efforts really focus on what's happening here at CSU. And I guess the reason I'm passionate about this is that we know that student success is directly linked to basic needs being met, food being one of those. And so I guess it's my passion or my commitment to try to help students be successful, and this is one avenue for doing so.
Hi, I'm Amanda McQuade. Is this on? I work for the Agriculture Experiment Station, which is out of the College of Agriculture. We have 9 agriculture experiment stations across the state, and it's a center of where we study what's grown locally. And so I came about in this food insecurity world about 10 years ago as a volunteer. I started a kind of a little gleaning organization, and that brought me to our Colorado State research farm because that's where the food was growing, and I wanted to bring it to the food banks. And so then that very slowly evolved into a permanent job. So be careful what you start when you volunteer. So my real passion in food insecurity is equity and equal access to fresh produce.
Good morning. I'm Amy Pisani, and I'm the CEO of the Food Bank for Larimer County, and please accept my apologies for my late arrival. Campus is a lot of fun. So I have been a hunger justice advocate for over 20 years. I have been working in the field of food insecurity. And just to share a very quick story, when I started college in 1990, I would say every single one of my friends had their parents supporting them financially, paying for schools, sending them money, and I was a lone exception to that. My parents made too much money for me to qualify for Pell Grants, but not enough money to support me. And that was somewhat of an anomaly, I think, at the time. And so this issue was never discussed on campus, not once. And it was a real struggle to get myself through college, working full-time, taking full-time classes. It took me 5 years. But now that I'm in this field and I see that more and more students are struggling with this issue, it's just really important to me that students have access to the food that they need so they can complete their degrees.
Hello, my name is Josh Sbicca, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Sociology. And my interest in food security really stems from some formative early life experiences. I grew up in a family of four boys, and it was a crazy situation. And, you know, my parents did their best to always have food on the table, and sometimes they did, and sometimes they didn't, and we would need to get help from people at church or friends or others. And at the same time, my parents were really sensitive to the fact that there were people that had it even a lot worse than we did. And we would go to soup kitchens and provide food to homeless people. And that sort of sensitivity continued as I became a young adult and was in college. And I worked a lot with the homeless in San Jose. So I went to Santa Clara University, which is in Silicon Valley. And I would work with students to put together vegan sandwiches and drive them around, throughout San Jose, find bridges where there's homeless people and encampments, and really realize that food is a sort of frontline resource for a lot of people. And so that sensitized me to these issues. And since then, I've been working, excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold. I've been working on food justice issues, which I'll come back to talking about food justice here in a moment, but both on a grassroots level as well as my research, that is my focus.
Well, hello, friends. My name is Ben. We're both with the student government here, and we're just here to kind of talk about students and how they're involved with food insecurity initiatives on campus. But I guess kind of my passion for food insecurity comes from the fact that for the first half of my life, I was not raised in the United States. I was raised in Venezuela and Indonesia, and I remember kids my age going through and kind of digging through the trash to get food. So food insecurity definitely feels a lot more visible in those types of countries, but it's something that I've kind of had a passion for ever since, and just seeing my parents and how they kind of had a passion for it. And once we came back to the States, we realized, wow, this is still something that happens. It just looks different at times. So definitely something that I've been passionate about.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alex. I'm the vice president with Ben. I think a lot of my passion for food insecurity comes from when I was younger. When I was younger, I would volunteer at soup kitchens all the time, and I think a lot of that passion came from just seeing the smile on someone's face when I would give them food, and it was just really incredible, and I knew that I wanted to continue doing that. And I think a lot of the reason why I'm still passionate about it as a student is because I know that students need nutrients in order to succeed, and I think we really want to just ensure that no ram goes hungry. So, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Johnson, can you please?
I'm going to show a few slides just because they have some statistics, and I think it's easier for me if I stand up. So hopefully that won't mess people up too much. I can be a little flappy when I'm talking, so if I get too wild, just tell me to sit down. The work that I do, like I mentioned, is a series of projects and programs that happen in collaboration with a number of people related to food insecurity, and our work specifically works with people that are on campus. That includes students, staff, and faculty that may be experiencing food insecurity. As I mentioned in my intro, we realized that this was sort of a major problem at CSU probably about 5 years ago. In collaboration with the food bank, we put together a survey which we sent out to students, staff, and faculty, and basically we asked the question like, yo, are you food insecure? We don't ask it that directly. These fine people from the food bank have the questions that work. And that survey revealed that we had about between 10 and 15% of our campus community was food insecure. That included staff and faculty as well. A more recent survey that was put out by these fine folks from ASCSU last year, their last year counterparts, they, oops, did that not show up? Project, blurb, thank you. Thank you. Revealed a higher number, so between 30 and 35% of our student population. So, we'll continue to collect data and that kind of thing. But the bottom line, in my opinion, is that if we're talking about 1 in 10 or 3 in 10 students that are food insecure, that's way too many, in my opinion. So anyway, there's a lot of people. There's some data here, and I'm happy to share slides if people want to. I just want to make sure I share time fairly with these people here. So, come on. There we go. So we run 5 programs which make up what we call Rams Against Hunger. The very first one that we started with is a meal swipe program, which we are continuing to run today. And Basically, the way this works is people can go to the Rams Against Hunger website. They can fill out some information. There are some criteria. You have to, the most important of which is that you have to have an estimated family contribution, that is a financial aid term, of $10,000 or lower. That's going to capture our most needy students, students that are Pell eligible, but it's also going to capture the student like Amy was describing. So those students that maybe their folks make too much money to kind of put them in the high need category, but maybe they don't have access to as many supports. So we wanted to capture that group as well. Essentially what we do is we accommodate those students on a first-come, first-served basis. We raise all of the money via private donations. Mostly staff, faculty, and alumni of CSU donate to this. We're raising a lot of money, about $200,000 a year, more than that actually. But and then we accommodate students as we have the money. They get 75 free meal swipes loaded electronically onto their RAM ID card, which they can access in any of the dining halls. So I love this program. I still think it's one of our best interventions because it is, those dining halls are open like at all hours. There's all different kinds of food. There's vegan food. There's foods that accommodates allergies. You don't have to clean up after yourself. You walk through, it's all you can eat. It's a really good thing. So that's a little bit of information. This semester we've had 644 students apply. We've accommodated 203 of those so far. There's a website where we take donations, and we also do a fundraiser in the dining halls where students that currently have a meal plan can donate guest meal swipes to the program if they wish. So it's a cool thing. That's that one. Burp. There's some more data. We've accommodated 1,482 students since the program started. We've done a lot of research around who is most likely to be represented in our programs. We have a lot of first-generation students, a lot of those Pell-eligible students. Most of the people that access our programs are Colorado residents. Students of color are more highly represented. And in this program, juniors and seniors are more highly represented because one of the rules is that you can't already have a meal planned through the dining halls to get this. So if you already have a meal plan, we're assuming that you're getting some food already. We've done a bunch of research. We published an article on this program, and the findings will not be surprising to you, but sometimes it's nice to do the math on it. Students that received this program were compared to students with similar EFCs, similar financial backgrounds. People that ate, surprise, surprise, did better academically, that they had higher GPAs, and they were retained at higher rates, so they graduated from CSU at higher rates compared to their peers. Let's pop to the next program, mobile food pantry. So when those waiting lists for that meal swipe program started to grow and grow and grow, we got together with that group of people and said, okay, we need to do a little bit more. And at the time, the Larimer County Food Bank was exploring this idea of going more mobile with their services. So we ran an experiment, which has now become our mobile food pantry. So essentially, once a month, the mobile food pantry comes to CSU. We park these giant vehicles down by the Hartshorn building. And students, staff, and faculty, anybody with a CSU ID can swipe their card and grab the food. I think the food bank does a really good job identifying foods that would be appealing to our campus community. So there's lots of fresh produce, fruits and vegetables, but there's also snack foods and crackers and frozen pizzas and Noosa yogurt and stuff that I think that students would enjoy as well. This has been kind of a smashing success. We have hundreds of students come to the, student, staff, and faculty come to this every month. Last year we served nearly 7,000 visitors. I'm sorry, I made a typo on this. We had almost 7,000 visitors total, a number of 2,768 unique visitors. So if you think about people coming multiple times at a time, multiple pantries during the year, that's what that is. Again, similar kinds of demographics based on our research. So student visitors are more likely to be racially minoritized, first generation, or Pell eligible compared to the overall student population. And then about 15% of our visitors are salaried employees, so people that work here at CSU. We know that their median income is about $36,000, which gives you a gauge of what it actually takes to live in Fort Collins as a living wage, and we're apparently not quite there at that wage. Let's see, what do we have? Okay, next one. This is one I'm actually really excited about. So As we started to expand our offerings, one of the things we also did was try to collaborate with Larimer County. So we work with people that are eligibility specialists that help folks to assess whether or not they qualify for federal benefits. So there's all different kinds of federal benefits that people can receive, one of which is called SNAP. Some of us know that as food stamps, but there's also other federal benefits that people can receive. One of the things that I learned over the summer is that Colorado is a state where we have lots of people that would actually qualify for these federal benefits, but there's a gap between those who would qualify and then those who actually apply for the resource. And so one of the things we're trying to do is make it easier for students who might qualify for this benefit to apply. So the process right now is pretty convoluted, to be honest. You have to travel downtown, you have to fill out this application online, which is really long and it asks for tons of information. You have to do an interview, and then if you do in fact qualify, you get the benefit card. And so one of the first things that we started doing a few years ago was actually physically bring those eligibility specialists to campus to meet with students to eliminate that whole process. So in 1 hour, you can sign up for a slot. You can come right here to the Laurie Student Center. You do your interview, you do the application, and if you qualify, you can get the STEP benefit easily. We're hoping to expand this because I think that this is a really, really missed opportunity. And so we're actually working with the social work department to have an intern that would be a part-time employee of both us and the Larimer County office that would be an eligibility specialist that would be here on campus permanently. And our hope is that we can work with financial aid to identify people that are likely to qualify based on the information we collect that can direct them directly into this. The beauty of this mechanism is that when you qualify for a federal benefit like this, that's all paid for by the federal government, so we don't actually have to purchase the food, which is really nice in terms of funding and sustainability. So that's the third one. Pocket pantries. So fourth intervention, this is a collaboration that we've had with ASCSU. One of the things, this has a kind of a different function than the mobile pantry. So at 6 different locations on campus, we have these small kind of grab-and-go locations where people can get single-serving mac and cheese, granola bar, oatmeal, that kind of food. We have 4 locations here in the Student Center, 1 at the stadium and 1 at the Health Network, and we are adding 1 more location in the housing area. This is fully funded by ASCSU. Last year's administration had some leftover funding, and they prioritized this as an aim. And so we have $50,000 to work with over the next 3 years to purchase the food. We're receiving that food both from the food bank and from a distributor that services the Laurie Student Center. And we stock these regularly, like every other week. Students can go to any of those locations and grab what they need. And that's where the locations are. And last but not least, I also love this one very much, and this is one I'm focusing on expanding as well. So the RAM Food Recovery Program is something that has come out of our housing and dining arm. If you think about lots of catered events happen on our campus, you have a staff meeting and there's leftover pizza. If that pizza is left over, historically it's just been thrown away because of food safety standards. And so what we've done with the RAM Food Recovery Program is if there's a catered event, a staff meeting or a lunch or whatever, anything that comes out of the housing and dining arm, and they have a lot of food left over, people can sign up for a text message. The catering staff there puts information in like, come to Durrell Center, we've got 4 cheese pizzas, and that food is available for a short amount of time, 30 minutes. People can go and access that food, and it meets 2 goals. So it helps us with food insecurity issues, because people that are food insecurity can, of course, go get that food. And second, it helps us with our green mission here at CSU. It eliminates food waste, which, frankly, is sort of silly, right? So I'm really excited about this because I just had some meetings this week that are pretty exciting, and it looks like the Laurie Student Center will be dipping their toe into this project as well. So hopefully you'll start to see some of those notifications coming out of this building also. And I think that's all I've got. Yep, so that's me, that's my information, and I'll take questions at the end so that people here can have a chance to speak as well. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Jensen. Dr. McQuade, please.
So I mentioned that I work for the Agriculture Experiment Station. We have a research station in Grand Junction, Colorado. It's where we study how to grow wine grapes better under the direction of Horst Kaspari, who's a faculty member here. And we grow tree fruit. So Janis Minas is the director of that research program. So the primary mission of the research program is to ask scientific questions, how to grow the food better in your region. If you're a major peach industry, which is what we are in Mesa County, you're not going to really get a lot of good applicable data from Georgia. And so that's what the purpose of agriculture experiment stations are. Our constituents, our clients, our community has really traditionally been growers. And so, so about, like I mentioned, about 10 years ago, I just started, I had a baby who was very passionate about fresh food. He would just raid our garden. And I had a moment of like, how could I feed him if we needed to go to a food bank, because he won't eat mac and cheese. He won't eat all this other stuff. And I knew kind of in general what was regularly available. And that sort of galvanized me to take on a gleaning project, which then started bringing me to the research center. So prior to us doing that, the model of the research center is that if you had extra product, you would sell it. And then you would take that money and put it towards your research. And so, so I would just come every year and then started getting bigger with volunteers to take that food to the food bank. And when we had our new research station manager come, he was like, this is a great way for us to connect with the broader community, not just the community of growers, but to connect with everybody. And so we stopped looking at the stuff that we grow from as a commodity to as a way to connect with the community. And so he and I just hatched out what would this look like if we had volunteers coming in and picking on our 80 acres, if we intentionally grew for the food banks so we could give first run produce to food banks. We could layer in some training of students who wanted to learn small scale agriculture. And we could bring schools in and have school kids get the experience on an actual real farm. So we have 6 acres under production, 4 of which are very actively produced right now. And so yeah, we just kind of conceived of it in the fields, and then CSU hired me. So I'm a little bit of an anomaly. But what we found is that it connects CSU to our local communities in such a higher level than what we were doing before. So we have 9 research centers across the state. 2 of them are here. Arctic North, which does a lot of grain, forage crops, and beef cattle. And then, or beef, I guess that's redundant. And then Arctic South, which is our horticultural center. And so, we've had such success in not only giving really rich educational opportunities to CSU students and other local college students, but also success in giving really fresh produce to local food banks. So we're in our 2.5 years in. We've just hit our $250,000 mark, and that is basically at 40 pounds at a time of fresh seasonal produce like tomatoes and kale. We provide some educational support for food banks so that their clients feel confident in using it and feel encouraged in taking it. And then we were really lucky to get a brand new facility upgrade so that we now have a teaching kitchen at our facility. And so we're able to bring in groups, community-based groups that are working with people who are struggling with diabetes. We work with children, and they go out and they harvest, and then they come and cook with it, and they learn. And we're just trying to change attitudes towards healthy food. So that's my program in a nutshell. What I wanted to advocate today was that if you're interested in getting into this field, really starting with that very basic grassroots part of it, of just giving food to people and being there in that transaction is pretty amazing. So we didn't just give the food and say like, here you go, enjoy the kale. I'm sure your clients will love it. And we sat and watched the distributions and talked and We've done that for 10 years to make sure that we're delivering the right food to the right people. Because there are some clients who use food pantries who don't have kitchens to go to, and they can't prepare the food that you're giving. There's some foods that are just so culturally not in sync that they're not popular. And so food is a great way, giving it is a great way to start getting involved, but then you also need to be there to watch. So I would really advocate that you just go to a food bank and start to participate and start to volunteer. The other thing that has come from us being in these food pantries is that we're sort of a connector. So because we go to all the food pantries, we're starting to hear all the common problems, and we're able to sort of start to take on a community organizing role. And we, because we're a university, have a little bit of that academic and time freedom to take on that community organizing role. And so we've helped organize a Hunger Alliance within our community. We just hosted a meeting with the Colorado Blueprint to End Hunger in our community. It was a day-long meeting so that people from the Front Range could talk to people in Mesa County. And that was an unexpected thing, but what we found is that when we work with community groups, they are really looking to the university for a higher game. You know, we came in as saying, like, we're farmers, we'll help you, we'll give you food. And they're like, that's great. But we also have this issue where our warehouses are ergonomically not set up straight. Could you connect us with somebody at the university who could help us do that? And it was like, oh, okay, I think we can. And so that's what I'm hoping you guys see as possibilities. It's not addressing food insecurity is not just about getting food there. It's about helping the entire community with the assets you have, which is your knowledge and your passion and your time. Because the real hard work that Amy is doing, which is moving millions of pounds of food, is very time consuming. And so the university and you guys can help by bringing some of that passion and that knowledge that they can't make capacity in their days to integrate. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We don't have a clicker, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. And I may or may not use that. Can I change the slides on there?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. So we'll see if I even get there. I'll stand up like Dr. Johnson. Okay, good morning. So as I mentioned, I'm the CEO of the Food Bank for Larimer County and have been in that position here in Larimer County for about 15 years. And in that time, a lot has changed in our community. First thing I want to share with you is the vision of the food bank, and that is a hunger-free Larimer County. Many people find that goal very aspirational, but for us, it's a little more pragmatic. And what that means to us is access to nutritious food in our community at all times when somebody needs it. And the way that we do that is through community partnerships and direct service that we operate ourselves. I also want to point out that my outfit. You may think that I am just an incredible Rams fan, which I'm not saying I'm not. But September is Hunger Action Month, and orange is the representative color of hunger. So it's a great month to have this particular discussion in because we are working to educate and build awareness in our community around issues of hunger. So I want to start with one thing that you talked about, Amanda, and that is food banks, food pantries. And just to set the record straight for what I'm going to discuss, as a food bank, and this is what food banks would say, we are large-scale distribution centers who bring food to a centralized location and then get it out to our community. A food pantry, as we refer to it, would be where the end user or client would come to access that food. We are part of a large network of food banks called Feeding America. There are 200 of us in the country. And each food bank operates quite differently. Since I have been the CEO at our food bank, we have had a huge emphasis on the nutritional quality and value of the food that we bring in. Now, saying that, I also want to be really clear that food waste is the reason that food banks typically exist. We're celebrating our 35th anniversary next month, so we've been around a long time. And in that time, more food is going to waste, not less food. So just quickly, what that means is that the Food Bank for Larimer County, for instance, goes to every grocery store in our community on a daily basis during the week and collects food that is edible but unsellable. That's where about a third of our food comes from. The vast majority of our food comes from either relationships with manufacturers or growers in Colorado and through our Feeding America network. And generally speaking, we are getting food that would end up in the landfill if we weren't recovering it. And I also want to mention that of the 9 million pounds of food that we distribute annually, approximately 40% of that is fresh produce. Now, as a retailer, about 15% of what you purchase is fresh produce. So kind of put that in perspective. We are distributing a lot of healthy food through the community. Now I want to talk about quickly how we do that and one of the challenges that we face, and that is that we can bring as much produce as we want into this community. I mean, there is so much produce still going to waste. The problem for us is that those pantries generally don't have the capacity to distribute that food. Those pantries may be open only once every 2 weeks or a couple hours a day. And because of that, they can't come and access that fresh produce. So there is a problem with the entire infrastructure. So on a program level, one of the first things that we do is we distribute food to other nonprofits in the community. And those might be food pantries, those might be domestic violence shelters, soup kitchens, as were mentioned earlier, all types of other nonprofit organizations. But we, as a food bank, take that a step farther and operate our own food pantries, specifically because of what I just mentioned, that there's an infrastructure issue with the agencies that get that food. So we operate what we call 2 brick and mortar fresh food share locations in Larimer County. One is about 1.5 miles north of campus, and the other one is in Loveland. And we are distributing literally millions of pounds of fresh produce to our community and other items on an annual basis. And at each of those food pantries, we are serving about 450 to 500 families every single day. So somewhere in the range of 900 families a day are coming to those food pantries for support and help. In addition to that, we operate a number of mobile pantries. Dr. Johnson has already discussed many of the programs that we have in partnership with CSU, and I have to say, I am so proud of what we do with you all at CSU, because campus food insecurity is being addressed at many, many universities. But I do think that the leadership of Colorado State University and then down to other faculty and staff have supported this as an initiative. And I am just incredibly proud of all the ways that students can get food on campus. So thank you, CSU, for that. But that is just one example of the many partnerships that we have in this community. So we also operate 2 other mobile food pantries 4 times a month in the community, as well as a food pantry at a medical clinic to really help folks who are coming in who might exhibit signs of food insecurity. They can immediately go and get healthy, nutritious food to address some of that at the Family Medicine Center. In addition to that, we also have a commercial kitchen where we prepare food from scratch every single day for both seniors and kids. We are the largest sponsor of the summer food program in the entire county in the summer when school is out. So kids can get free and reduced lunch during the school year, and when school is out, those kids have to have a place to go, and there has to be a sponsor providing those meals. So we're the largest sponsor in the community of those meals. And then we take things a little bit more to a new level with education and outreach. And before I continue, I do want to mention that Lauren Rhodes, our program director, is in the audience, and she is in charge of all these programs. So she's a great resource if after the program. So we take it a step further by offering education and outreach programs. So we've got Nourishing Network, distribution to about 100 agencies across the community. We've got senior and kids meals made from scratch. We operate these 2 brick and mortar food pantries and 3 mobile pantry locations if you include CSU. And then in addition to that, we also look at ways that we can help move people toward greater economic security, as well as address hunger. So first, Cooking Matters. We have a partnership with Share Our Strength, Cooking Matters, where we are trying to teach nutrition education to those who are interested in that program. Lauren's also in charge of that. And then I want to say that we also, in about a month, are going to be hiring a full-time SNAP outreach coordinator. And that individual will be responsible for exactly what Dr. Johnson talked about, that we have a huge gap between people who are eligible for food stamp benefits and those who apply and receive them. And one thing, in addition to what you mentioned, Jen, is that that's a huge economic benefit to our community. Because those dollars are federal, that is money that is not coming into our community that could be coming into our community. So there are many, many reasons that it's important to get people signed up for those benefits. And I also received SNAP benefits when I was in college, and it made a huge, huge difference to me. Okay, so I really quickly want to show you, I have a whole presentation, and I am not showing you this whole presentation because I know I only had 10 minutes. But the food pantries that I mentioned, Fresh Food Share, and the mobile pantries, are really the most important thing that we do in the community. And several years ago, in an effort to address access, we wanted to look at where do the individuals live that are coming to these food pantries? And let me ask you all. You live here in Fort Collins or in Loveland. Maybe you live in Greeley. I don't know. But tell me, anybody, where do you think that people who are hungry in Fort Collins and Loveland live specifically? Is there an area of town that they live in? Do you think? Or an area of town that they don't live in? Anyone brave enough to answer the question? They don't live in Old Town? Okay. Is that what, or they do? Don't. Okay. Don't live in Old Town? Is there anywhere they do live?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. That's the right answer. Okay, so what I want to show you is we took, help me out here, Lauren, 11,000 roughly households, and used ArcGIS software to map out those households, another partnership with CSU I might mention. And we wanted to see where are people coming from. So I'm going to show you that map. And when we first did this, it was shocking. So let's see here. No? Is that moving? Okay. No, it's not. If anybody would like to help me out, I am happy to take some help. Okay, if you can keep, okay, is that it? Okay, then I can get where I need to go. Okay. Okay, so here you have it. This is a map of all the households that came to one of our locations in 2018. The highest yellow star, I believe, represents CSU. Or that's FMC. Okay. So actually, CSU is not represented on this map, correct? Because the other yellow one would be the Unitarian Church. To students, right. So all I'm saying is that this doesn't even represent the individuals who come to CSU because of that. The red star is our fresh food share location in North Fort Collins, and the other red star is our fresh food share location in Loveland. So the answer to the question absolutely is yes. Hunger lives everywhere in Larimer County, not just in one location. And there is not a location where someone is not struggling. And people are struggling for many different reasons, of which we don't have time to address today. But at the end of the day, everyone needs to eat to be successful, and that's what it comes down to for us. One more. I think there are 3 slides in a row. Okay, so this just represents it another way as a heat map throughout the county. So you can take a quick look at that. Okay, and then this breaks it out, so it's a little bit bigger so that you can see Fort Collins, Wellington, and then the Loveland-Berthoud area. So one of the things that we were most surprised about was the hunger in Southwest Larimer County. But again, it's everywhere. And so with that, I'm going to finish up my portion, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I just want to begin by thanking Magdalena for putting together this panel and also my co-panelists here. I think what you can probably tell right now is that food insecurity is a serious problem, both here at CSU as well as in Fort Collins and along the Front Range. Excuse me. And also that there are many kinds of interventions that people engage in to try and solve the problem. I want to begin with a little bit of a story that will put into perspective my analysis as a sociologist when looking at these kinds of problems. So I started a research project in my mid-20s in West Oakland, California. This is a historically black community. It's a low-income community, and it's a community with high levels of food insecurity and very low access to fresh and healthy food. I received a bike. I was an intern at People's Grocery, a food justice organization in this community, and I was riding my bike from North Oakland to West Oakland on a regular basis to go into this community, grow food, work in their nursery, work through their subsidized community-supported agriculture program, and other kinds of activities. But on the very first day that I entered this community, there was a marked shift from one neighborhood, which was bordering West Oakland, and then West Oakland itself. And as soon as I got into West Oakland, there were police helicopters flying overhead and a police car that buzzed by me at 60 miles per hour on a surface level street. To say it was jarring was an understatement. And on that same bike ride, it was very apparent that the infrastructure in this community was poor. There were really low quality parks. There weren't many sidewalks. If you looked at the kinds of stores that did exist, they're kind of dilapidated storefronts, mainly liquor stores, convenience stores. And I learned very quickly from people who lived in that community and worked in that community that there were a lot of problems, and that food was just one of those problems. And that when people talked about their lack of access to food, what they would also talk about are things like poverty, over-policing, the threat of gentrification, the lack of resource investment by the city of Oakland, the history of white flight, of redlining, of many other kinds of realities that intersected with the experience of food insecurity. And so it got me thinking that if we're going to talk about food insecurity, we can't just talk about food. in many respects, misses some of the sociological, economic, and political drivers, which is what I really want to focus on and tie back to this experience of student food insecurity. And I want to give you a quote from Brahma Mahdi, who was the former executive director of People's Grocery, and he was talking about, in this quote, the difference between charity and justice. And he says, charity provides social services, while justice promotes social change. Charity responds to immediate needs, while justice responds to long-term change. Charity assumes people need expertise and help from others, while justice assumes people have expertise and are capable of helping themselves. The analysis and strategic choices that come with the approach have huge implications for how and even if a problem is sustainably solved. And I begin with this quote because I want to push us to think about what does a sustainable solution to student food insecurity look like? And what does it look like here at CSU? So I want to give some more stats. I teach a giant social problems class. I have 200 students in that class every fall, and I talk about food insecurity every fall in that class. And I administered the USDA's 6-item food security module in my intro level course. 150 students were in the class that day. And to give you some numbers, 28% were considered to have low food security by this measure, okay? While another 22% were considered to have very low food security. So that is 50% of these students were food insecure in some way. Now, this is just one classroom. I don't provide these numbers to suggest that it's 50% at CSU, but if we take some of the numbers that Dr. Johnson provided, let's say 1 in 3 people are food insecure. As she pointed out, that's more than we want, right? We want 0, ostensibly. But then the question becomes, why is that? And what do we know on a research level as to why student food insecurity exists? So according to this budding body of research, which is still in its nascent stages because it's been actually quite difficult to conduct these studies, and also that it's been difficult to have uniformity in the kinds of measures that are actually used to study food insecurity, which is another issue in and of itself. But here's generally what we know. There's declining state support for college at a federal level. There's fewer Pell Grants, for instance. And we also know that tuition is rising. There's also unaffordable housing in many college communities, including this one here in Fort Collins. We know that racial and economic disparities, not just outside of college, but once people of Latinx and Black backgrounds come to college, that a lot of those disparities continue in terms of things like food access, which was affirmed by a lot of Dr. Johnson's statistics. Also, if you have a history of food insecurity as a child, you're likely to carry that with you. If you live off campus, you're more at risk. And then if you're receiving financial aid, you're more at risk. So I want to give you a few more numbers here at CSU to kind of put this into perspective. Tuition has increased between 2008 and 2016, 88%. If you look at what students now pay in tuition, it's about 2/3 of the cost of tuition is on students themselves. This was flipped the other way. 1/3 was on students a handful of decades ago. So it's been a very rapid shift in the amount of money that students are shelling out to go to college. Room and board has also increased. Room and board for undergraduates with a meal plan has increased over the same time period by 33%. On-campus apartments with or without a meal plan have increased by 23%. Off-campus apartments in Fort Collins without a meal plan have increased 46%. Textbooks and supplies have increased 73%. Health insurance has increased 65%. Now, when you consider the costs of each of these items on their own, that increases a lot. And that increase is way more than, for instance, wages. We know that wages are stagnant by and large and have not kept up with the cost of living. And this means for students who are struggling to get by that that's borne on them, and something like food insecurity is intimately related to housing insecurity. So I want to come back to that in a moment. So what would a food justice response look like if we take this analysis of a more structural approach to the problem? So a commitment to food justice, from my perspective, in its most robust form, advocates for the right to healthy food that is justly and sustainably produced. So for example, the United States is not a signatory to the UN Declaration of Human Rights statement on the right to food. So we live in a national context where the notion of a right to food doesn't exist, and so that has all kinds of trickle-down effects to how we then act on more micro levels. A food justice approach also recognizes diverse cultural foodways, so this point that Amanda made about needing to have culturally appropriate food for people, no matter who they are and what their food security status is. It promotes also self-determination, democratic participation, and an equitable distribution of resources in the food system. You know, if we want to have an equitable distribution of food, we also have to have people who are most impacted have a say in the process of what's going on. And so what would this mean for college students? My sense is that this means that students have a right to healthy and culturally appropriate food if we take food justice seriously, not just any kind of food to fill some kind of caloric necessity. And this is a high ask, right? It's a high ask to say you're food insecure and you also have a right to really good food. And the question of how we go from that kind of claim to another reality is an open question. But it also means that food should be coming from sustainable sources. CSU right now is going through this STARS rating system, which is sort of the sustainability rating system that the university has done really well on. But one area it's done very poorly on actually has to do with the quality of food that is procured and then sold on campus. And it's a huge area, an opportunity for improvement. So for example, there's a national campaign called the Real Food Challenge. And if this university, for example, were to adopt the Real Food Challenge, this is actually one of the metrics to improve that aspect of the STARS rating system. So again, it's a huge opportunity on an institutional level to get more sustainably produced food to our students. And then last, food insecure college students need to have a say in the process of solving the problem. And that food resources should be distributed equitably on campus. And so and this is the sociologist in me, you know, I do a lot of community-based research, and if you look at the kinds of solutions that come out of partnerships with people most impacted by a particular phenomena, they tend to be more robust because they're tacked to the real lived experiences of people who are informing then what the solutions are, and not some kind of alternative which might be a parachute solution. And so, you know, and I see college students suffering from food insecurity all the time, and you know, I want those students to have a say in the process. And so I want to end with just a couple more comments and getting us to think about, well, what might be some institutional responses to the problem of food insecurity on campus? We have a lot of the interventions. Those are necessary. And we need to be solving the problem on an institutional level at the same time to close that gap, right? So here's a few things perhaps that we could discuss and think about. The first is, how do we increase financial aid for low-income college students? And what this means, if we start to ask these questions, is we need to have other people in the room besides just the people that care about food insecurity. We need to have people in the room that have decision-making power and authority on other kinds of levels that see the relationships between, say, poverty, food insecurity, and housing insecurity. We also need to talk about what does it mean to reduce the cost of tuition or advocate for ways to get the state to support college tuition. On a concrete level here in Fort Collins, this might mean eliminating the U+2 law. In the survey that Dr. Johnson mentioned that took place last year, it was not just a food insecurity survey, it was also a housing insecurity survey. And that survey showed that there was, you know, on the order of about 20% of students having some kind of housing insecurity. And so there's an intimate relationship between if you can't afford housing and food, what are the trade-offs that people make as a result of that? And so, you know, this is something where there could be leadership on the part of student government and others, and also showing the numbers so that policymakers in this city know why it's important to eliminate a law such as that. Questions about mandating universal health care coverage, and then, you know, food waste redistribution is super critical, and I think there are ways that are already in play to get food to the people that need it, and so we should continue to think about how to close that gap between what's wasted and what people need. And I'll close as a sociologist. We need to keep studying this, and we need to ask the right questions using the most robust measures that we have available, and we need to track this on a regular basis, because if we're not tracking this on a regular basis, we're ultimately doing a disservice to our students. And as somebody who's in the classroom every week and seeing students go through this, we owe it to our students to do this right, ask the right questions, do the right research, and make this transparent to the university community, and post the right numbers and statistics so that we can have an honest conversation about what's actually going on.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we'll keep this real brief because we want to be respectful of y'all's time. We know we're running a little behind. But we just wanted to share a little bit, not just what student government is doing and some of our initiatives this year, but also just students across the campus and how they're involved with some initiatives on campus and how we engage students. I know one big piece of, as far as student government goes, one thing we believe in when it comes to food insecurity is engagement, is getting students engaged with the issue. They don't have to be food insecure, but that's how we really increase knowledge about it. So a big thing that Alex and I believe in is just service projects, getting students involved with service. A big idea that we have for that, or something that we've already done and that we continue to do, is volunteer opportunities with Fort Collins Rescue Mission. I know another is the mobile food pantry, which Alex can actually talk about because she's volunteered there.
Thank you, Ben. I really just wanted to emphasize how incredible the mobile food pantry is and how well of a job Slice and the food bank do, making it as successful as it is. What's really great, and just going off of the engagement piece that Ben mentioned, is that as students we get the opportunity to volunteer at these mobile food banks and be the ones passing out the fresh produce and the dry food. And as students we also get the opportunity to go through the mobile food pantry, as if you have your CSU ID, and you can bring bags or boxes and you can get as much food really as you need, which is super awesome. I only got the opportunity to volunteer at the summer, and I went to one of them and I was like, wow, there's so many people here. It's really great to see this happening and that people know about this and that people are more than welcome to come get as much food as they need to not be hungry. And someone from Slice was like, this isn't even a lot of people. You should see it during the school year. And I was like, oh my goodness. So that it's super awesome to really get that hands-on experience from either side of that. And then another really great thing is the pocket pantries. We actually have one right outside of ASCSU, and it's pretty stocked with food. I think right now we are brainstorming other ways of how to target students, whether that's school supplies during the August season, because school supplies obviously are more in high demand during that time, because that's when school's getting back into session. I mean, really just making sure that the food is super stocked in those sections and whatnot. We really just want to cater to as many students as we can and hopefully minimize food insecurity as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, definitely, and it's important that students service these projects because you could not have students service it. It could just be faculty or staff servicing it. When we have students involved, that spreads information and just gets more students kind of to be knowledgeable on the topic. Want to briefly touch on a couple other things we have going on in student government. One of those being we're working to get open educational resources. So if you don't know what that is, textbooks funded by the state of Colorado. Maybe you're using an online software for a class funded by the state of Colorado. Why is that important when we're talking about food insecurity? Because unexpected costs, we know, are one of the drivers of food insecurity. You might be able to budget for college. You can maybe take out a loan, incur some form of debt, get a grant for that. You cannot budget for an unexpected cost, and because of that, we're trying to minimize those unexpected costs. So we've been meeting with the governor's office to work on open educational resources. The big step is getting faculty on board with that to say, we're going to use textbooks in a classroom that students pay $0 for. That's huge because that stops an unexpected cost. Another one of those is just housing. We know the city of Fort Collins, when you limit housing, very simply, it raises the price of housing in the state. There's a study by the city of Fort Collins this last year that in the past decade, housing prices in Fort Collins have gone up 60% higher than cities that are considered similar. So they had a criteria for similar. So we really do have these rising prices that don't compare to other cities. They're way higher. So we've been meeting with the mayor and city council members to explain to that this isn't just a student issue. This isn't students wanting to have 5 people in a house. This is actually something that can help students, and food insecurity is definitely a big thing we bring up with that. Last thing I really want to share, the driving factor I want to share is students care about this initiative, and there's so much untapped potential in students. It feels like everything in student government can really be controversial. When we talk about food insecurity, it feels like every student is on board. Students have voted time and time again to fund food insecurity initiatives. They show up when we have volunteer opportunities, and it really does feel like there's some untapped potential in terms of students and servicing these projects. Did you have anything to add, Alex? No? Sounds great. Thank you all.
Well, thank you very much, excellent panelists. And now I'll open the floor for questions from the audience and also from our speakers. And please, if you have ideas on how to improve existing initiatives, and you have ideas on how to join the initiatives or additional ideas on how to reduce food insecurity, please bring them on. Thank you. Questions?
Jenn, I just have a question for you. I just wanted to ask if there's a plan longer term to expand RAM food recovery to external businesses or things that are in the surrounding area, or if it's something potentially that we could utilize. I don't know what the tech service looks like, but where we could share that with other community colleges and things in the area as well, if there's a, any type of expansion possibility in that.
So our priorities have been, this started in housing, which tends to be our area in the catering arm on the university that is the most willing to try a new idea and work out the bugs, right? So my goal for this year was to get the Laurie Student Center online, which I think is going to occur, which is really exciting. We have one other catering arm on campus, which is our stadium, and that's a fundamentally different operation, so that would be our next kind of priority. I haven't thought necessarily about what this would look like off campus, but I'm open. So yeah, tons of openness. I think, again, like lots of people talked about, like minimizing food waste is huge. And if we don't, we've talked, Amy and I have talked about this with others, but like if you think about the way that you move, if you have to move food around a lot, that gets really, really expensive. So if we can keep the food on campus that is otherwise going to go to waste, that is the most effective, like cost-effective way to kind of deal with this issue. So I'm definitely open. And then, yeah. Yep. Yep. That'd be awesome. Yep. Totally, I'm open. And then in terms of the technology, it was built in-house by our IT guys. I don't think it was difficult at all, and I'm sure they would be willing to share it with other people. It's very, very, very simple. There's a back end that our catering staff sees, and they type in the information, they hit send, and then it goes to all the subscribers. People can unsubscribe at any time. It's literally a text. It's very easy. Yeah.
I want to first thank you for all of the panelists here. I think each of your presentation inspires me in different ways. And I do have different questions for you. So the first one is going to Jenn. So I'm a graduate student in the Department of Nutrition, and we developed a questionnaire about food insecurity at early 2019, and we give it to a class of hospitality students. So the results coming in, the data really matches your data. So it's about 30% of that class of students that is food insecure. However, many of them are already working in restaurants, so they're already getting free meals. So that number actually, according to Josh's data, about 50% of students are actually food insecure. And the other thing we learned from the survey is they don't have a deep knowledge of what kind of resources is on campus. So the first question on mine is, do you have any plans to promote the programs on campus so more students actually know them?
Great question.
So just to follow up, I'm not at all surprised by your statistics. There's been a lot of research on this topic nationwide around what it looks like on college campuses, and the numbers tend to range between 10 and 41% of students. So I think your numbers are probably right on, and I think CSU has a big problem, and it's kind of unremarkable, unfortunately, in the sort of national context. And then in terms of marketing, so if you go to Rams Against Hunger, that's our website, it has all the programs listed, and then the main form of marketing that we use are just these little business cards, and they say hungry ? And they refer people to the website. The website has got all the information about when the mobile pantries are happening, the application for the Meal Swipe program, locations of all the pocket pantries, dates of when SNAP benefit people will be coming, and then the sign-ups for the text messaging system. So if you would like some, my office is just down the hall, and I'm more than welcome to, I can give you a whole stack and you can pass them out in your class. Yeah.
Any other? Yes, please. Go ahead.
My second question is for Amanda. So you mentioned that giving delivery right food to right people, and I think that is absolutely crucial. I'm the food bank outreach intern for the Growing Project. I've been working in front of the food bank for half a year. So at least from my experiences, the food bank does have a very diverse clientele. So how do you know what are the right food for the right people? Do you do any need assessments to know what they really need, and how do you actually deliver the right food to the right people?
We ask a lot of questions. So we go to the distributions and we help. We help at the pantries. We also go to the Food Bank of the Rockies, which is kind of an equivalent to the Larimer County Food Bank. And we talk to the agencies that come pick up food there, and we watch what they're taking, and we, ask, and sometimes you ask, why aren't you taking my butternut squash? You can get people a little defensive and they'll take it, but so we try to do it in gentle ways and to see what kind of support. But it's really being there. It's logging a lot of hours. So I've done it, for 10 years, but then also my students do it. My students who grow the food, they actually spend an entire day making the deliveries, and so we time the deliveries to the time of the distributions so that we can get a feel for if we're meeting the needs and if the clientele is changing. Because in our community, the food banks and the food pantries are open at all different times. They're in different locations, and just the way you offer the food, whether you offer it in a prepackaged box or whether it's kind of an open style, that even changes the type of clientele that will come and the type of foods that they're seeking. And so we make deliveries during those distributions, and my students learn and will say, like, oh, that's not popular. Or, boy, we need to grow more of that. We need to harvest more of that. The other thing we do is we can't do too much of this because, like, right now we hit the 75,000 pound mark. So that literally means semi-trucks are pulling into the farm and we're loading up. But we prioritize delivering to our local partners, and so we make about 10 deliveries around Mesa County, and that the reason is so that we can kind of understand it a little bit better. Geez, I just lost my train of thought. I'm very sleepy. I've had a very long week. What was I going to say, Amy? Okay, it's completely gone. So yeah, we're there and we're present, and we try to make a big, we try to connect with people and understand what they're wanting. And the choice, yes. So for a lot of places, pantries don't get a ton of choice. So when you do food rescue, part of the deal with a food rescue when you're going to Sprouts or something is that you take everything, and that's kind of part of the deal. Because if you go and you pick and choose what is there, then that means that grocery store is now stuck with product that is going to go into the waste stream, and they want to avoid that. And so in some ways, these grocery rescue programs are just in most ways, they're such a blessing because you get fresh food that's very perishable, that you can get out to a community. But the flip side is that the pantries don't have a choice in this. And so if a pantry really prioritizes nutrition, they may be stuck with the baked goods that they have to give out. And that's kind of just part of doing that business. We give pantries a choice. So I put together an order form that says, this is what we have today, what's your quantity and what do you want? And that helps us be a little bit more responsive to their clients as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My next question is for Amy. So I'm actually worked in front of the food bank every Monday from 12 to 2 and giving out baby plans to food bank clients for 6 months. And I'm not only telling them about some nutrition information, what kind of plant you're growing, I'm also interested in their basket and what they take out of the food bank. Mm-hmm. So at least from my observation, I'm not sure if this is correct, so that's why I'm asking this question. So most of the customers, from my observation, take processed food instead of fresh produce. Most of them will love fruits, but you rarely see vegetables in their basket or in their carts. So I'm not sure if that's true in both of the locations of the Larimer County. I'm not even sure if this is representative. But that's my first question. My second part is, does the food bank has any kind of nutrition program that kind of try to promote eating vegetables? From my experience, that when I talking to the clients, one of their questions will be, I don't know what to do with the vegetables. I know this lettuce is there or spinach is there, but I don't know how to cook them, or I don't even know what I can use them for. So does the food bank has any of the nutrition-related classes or presentations or like a tasting event and actually can help your clients to get familiar with the vegetable and also knows how to cook them?
So to address your first question, let me ask you specifically, where were you passing the plants out?
Food banking for Collins, so in the northern location.
So Blue Spruce?
Yes.
Okay. I really have to say I'm surprised by what you have to say, because the highest percentage of food that actually goes to that facility is fresh produce. So if it's going to that facility, it's also going out of that facility. And so we have, and Amanda referred to this, a client choice food pantry. So we put out what we bring in and say to our clients that come in, take what you need. If you don't like it, don't know how to cook it, don't want it, don't take it. If you have an allergy to it, don't take it. But the vast majority of the food that we have going into that facility is fresh produce. So I really can't speak much to your observation, knowing the inventory side of it is that it is mostly fresh produce. So once a family gets in there, they obviously can take whatever they want. So if they choose not to take the fresh produce, that is their choice. So I don't know if you were just there on days where people didn't like to take produce or not. But again, we are distributing, that 9 million pounds of food. Roughly 40% of it is fresh produce, and most of that goes to those 2 food share locations. So that's what I can say about that. Secondarily, you asked about nutrition. And so I had mentioned that we are a partner with Cooking Matters, which is actually a nationwide program that promotes healthy cooking. And so, and also takes clients who are interested to grocery stores to teach them how to shop. And so that is something that we offer. And in the past, we have also offered what we called tasting table. Lauren is also a registered dietitian and has a lot of dietetic interns that work for her on a very regular basis, and so, or do internships with us on a very regular basis. So we had the tasting table, and I think we're trying to revive that at some point. And what that was specifically was, gosh, we have lots of butternut squash. And we want to show folks how you can cook this healthy, but also with maybe some of the other products that we have available that day, and providing not just the recipe, but also a taste of it. Now, I'm also going to say something that might not be popular, but I'm going to tell you the other side of it, is that when we have surveyed the clients that come to Food Share, many of them tell us, we don't want your cooking classes. We know how to cook, we just don't have time. Or we don't have time for your cooking classes, which is actually why we established the tasting table, because it was the quickest way that we could think to provide the education and information to people with a taste without them having to commit, because Cooking Matters is a commitment. It's a 6-week commitment. Is that right, Lauren? Most people who are also experiencing food insecurity and poverty, many of them don't have the time to go to those classes. So we try to meet folks where they're at in terms of what we offer, and then where they're at. If they don't want that education or tell us that, you know, hey lady, we know how to cook, I don't have the time to prepare butternut squash once I get home from work, that's okay too. So.
And just feed off of that. So we had a student intern with us last summer to be in the food banks. And one thing she noticed was that we had these beautiful recipes that our registered dietitian put together. We had tastings. And the most effective thing was to actually work with the food pantry volunteers. Because the first thing that, well, first of all, you have to label your food. You have to label it in a beautiful and attractive manner, and that conveys the dignity that you feel when you're giving that food. But it also is just a simple label, like, what the heck is this? Is this spinach or chard, you know? And so that was an easy win. But then the second thing is that when a client had a question, the first person they turned to was the volunteer. And if the volunteer was like, I don't know how to cook that, then that was a loss. And so we learned very quickly just to put together a super simple one-pager. It's even a half a page. Like, we have delivered butternut squash to you. This is best cooked at 400 degrees with a little oil. And it was meant for the volunteer. And it also gave tips like, do you store it in the fridge or do you store it on the counter? And like how to pick a good one or something like that. And so it was that human contact that we realized that was the biggest bang for the buck, rather than, you know, spending all this money on nice recipes. And so that was something that came from a CSU student and came from a community partnership.
Thank you so much for your answers.
Thank you very much for very important and interesting questions. The panel would be uploaded to the webpage of the College of Agriculture and to the webpage of the One Health Institute. Lauren is signaling me to give. Please, that will help us very much if you complete the evaluation. Thank you, Lauren. And I want to thank you, all the panelists, for an excellent panel and all the people that kindly came to hear it. Please continue advocating. You are the best tool to address food insecurity. Help us disseminate the message, please. Thank you very much.